Hi friends, my name is host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. I'm a professional debate coach. This is my old debate school that no longer is extant, but in case aren't familiar with me from my personality stuff, I'd like to chime in on this Twitter ban and the transgender issue with Jordan Peterson because it's easily enough resolved as to how we ought position ourselves respective to each object within the calculus. So let's start with the broad issue of transgenderism. To correctly describe it, you'd say this is a reality that individuals typically create a political mythology around. So it is not, in any meaningful sense of the word, a significant policy question for anybody. The most significant policy questions surrounding it are those linked to sports, but will end up being resolved simply because of the way reality plays out. If you allow people who have all the biological advantages of being born male competing against those who lack those biological advantages, simply altering some of the physicality of the person who's retained some of the advantages of being male and altering our accepted understanding of what their identity is not going to eliminate those biological advantages. And girls aren't going to want to play against boys just because they have a different identity now, right? If they're always going to lose to them. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but I think in some sports, you'd see that would, in fact, be the case. So, those are realities that the world's going to have to accept regarding that issue on sports. And they will, because otherwise it ruins the point of sports, which is fair competition. Fair competition among equal competitors, relatively equal competitors. So now let's get to Jordan Peterson's Twitter ban. What he did is he referred to the actor who played in Juno, who goes by Elliot Page now, and he referred to that individual by the name they used in Juno, namely Ellen Page. And Jordan Peterson also referred to the medical procedures that actor has recently undergone as indicating something criminal. Now, I get that Jordan Peterson was trying to be hyperbolic and or metaphorical there, unless he wasn't. If he wasn't, he's just an idiot. There's no crime taking place. You're talking about this being done at the behest of the person who's having it done, as most plastic surgery is. In order to call it a crime in a literal sense, you have to point to laws against plastic surgery that it's breaking. There are no such laws. What he's saying is that it's a natural crime of some kind, except that's not what crime means. Crime is a word that means things, right? So, Jordan Peterson is simply doing what everybody mostly does, which is, I'm going to mythologize politics so that I can get super angry at those darn meow-meows and play this blame game. It's a lot easier for people to process complex realities with knowing who the bad guy is and hating them a lot. But that's not what grown-ups do with politics. So grown-ups treat political matters as political matters. Unfortunately, real political matters are boring. They are not about stupid shit like this, right? If, in fact, Jordan Peterson were to be honest in his tweet, he would say something like, I believe that the public should take ownership of that person's body and choices. That's what he should say, because that's what he means. Now, here's the thing, though. What Twitter did is just the same bullshit at the next level up. So Jordan Peterson's tweet would have had to have been uniquely bad from equivalent tweets from various parties. Not just, the uniqueness has to be on some grounds other than simply it's this topic. So if the justification by Twitter is it's slanderous because it's presenting as factual, contrafactual information that's actually disinformation, namely that this individual's name is Alan, well, how thorough is Twitter really at enforcing that equivalently among all parties across all grounds? I don't know. If Twitter's simply saying, well, we want to make a point about this specific issue, we're going to isolate it and say, okay, regarding this specific issue, we're taking this stance and enforcing it in this way, then they need to articulate some sort of reason why that particular mythologized non-issue, instead of some other particular mythologized non-issue, like every other political matter in the world. And I guess the distinction they'd be able to cite is that Jordan Peterson is politicizing an individual in directly provocative ways that are contrafactual and run afoul of emerging norms regarding people's control over their own identity. Now, the objection that most parties have regarding these kind of issues is that having control over your identity seems to be expressing a lot more in certain contexts perhaps than people want, as forces being exerted upon me to change the way I talk about you. So, here's the deal. By and large, almost everybody seems in broad agreement that if somebody tells you they've changed their name and this is what their name is, that you call them by the name they want to, that they say they want to be called by, and that's what their name is. That you get to say what your name is. So that's why you call the formerly known Ron Artest as Meta World Peace. But if I was I'm going to be a dick with your identity for political reasons thing, I could consistently call him Ron Artest in all my tweets. Is that going to get me banned from Twitter is really the question. Unless Twitter can articulate something like that they apply cross-issue rather than that this is arbitrarily decided for a confluence of particular reasons, but that represent no overarching rule of thumb that makes any sense, then Twitter needs to stop behaving like that, because they're undermining everybody's ability to predict when and whether something crosses a poorly established line, and or why we ought to treat it like this. In the absence of explanation, people can't be right. And that's what we're seeing across the board in the discursive environment, the public discursive environment. We're seeing somebody like Jordan Peterson be afforded statuses like wise, correct, and so forth, even though he's clearly an idiot. If he weren't an idiot, he wouldn't have contrafactually claimed that somebody who's no longer named that has engaged in a pseudo-criminal behavior while ignoring all the facts and, most importantly, the reality that he's participating in that same toxic, mythologized team bullshit that destroys America and the world all the time. So, let's knock that shit off. Twitter, don't be part of the problem by taking one side in this mythological bad guy battle, the creation of abstract boogeymen that we can hate, that is replacing a genuine political process that sounds exactly like what I'm doing right now. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese, no matter what gender you want it to be. Any gendered cheese is fine.